Hello watch collectors, welcome to our YouTube channel. Today we're talking about an often overlooked collection by Rolex. It actually has been the best performing Rolex collection by a few metrics. Can you guess which one it is? All the data in this video comes from WatchCharts, the world's leading secondary watch market research platform. Dive into the data yourself at watchcharts.com. To get more specific about our opening question, let's look at these four watches. We have the GMT Master Pepsi reference 126710BLRO, the Daytona reference 116500, the Submariner reference 116610LN, and the Datejust reference 126334. Can you guess which one recorded the best performance since July 2020? If you guessed the Datejust, thank you for paying attention to our title. Indeed, it is the 126334. Granted, the very popular GMT Master and the Daytona performed very well at around 17–18%, but the Datejust gained almost 30% over the past 5 years. And keep in mind that July 2020 would have been before the craziness of the 2021-2022 rally that made prices of sports watches explode, so we are not just looking at the downturn that followed. Looking at the short-term performance of the four watches, the Datejust is actually the only watch that has seen a positive growth over the past year. Zooming out to the collection level, looking at the performance breakdown, the Datejust is actually the best performing in production collection over the past year, and the three sports collections we looked at all saw their prices go down. Looking at the 5-year performance, the Daytona collection does do better than the Datejust collection, driven by the high growth of precious metal Daytonas, but the Datejust did almost 20 percentage points better than the GMT Master and the Submariner collections. In fact, the Datejust outperformed just about every still Rolex sports watch over the past 5 years. Let's now look at why the Datejust is the best performing Rolex that should definitely be on your radar. First, the Datejust is an icon. The original Datejust in a solid gold 36mm case that you see here came out in 1945, before the Submariner, before the GMT Master, and before the Daytona. It's not a reach to say that this watch really represents the design philosophy of most Rolexes that followed. Sure, the Cyclops magnifying lens didn't come to the Datejust until 1953, but this Datejust was the first automatic watch in the world to feature date window complication. You can also see the introduction of the Jubilee bracelet, whose design has mostly remained the same to the present day. By the way, it's called the Jubilee bracelet because it marked the 40th anniversary, or the Ruby Jubilee, of Rolex, a brand founded in 1905. Second, the Datejust is a bestseller. Of all in-production Rolex models, the Datejust 126334 saw the most transactions this past year by far, followed by the 41mm Datejust reference 126300 with a smooth bezel and the 36mm Datejust reference 126234 on the fluted bezel. We tracked more than 8,700 sales for the Datejust 126334, while the same number is 3,100 for the Pepsi and 3,800 for the Daytona reference 116500. It clearly has lots of interest on the secondary market. While we don't know the retail numbers, it would be pretty reasonable to assume that Rolex makes a lot more Datejusts than any of the sports collections. Third, the Datejust is very versatile because it can be dressed up or down. While it definitely can be worn with a suit, especially with a fluted bezel and or a Jubilee bracelet, it also wouldn't look out of place when you're wearing it with a t-shirt and shorts. This is also why the Datejust appeals to a lot of non-watch collectors, because most people, as much as you and I might refuse to admit, only have one or two nice watches, so they'd want to find versatile options. Fourth, the Datejust has seen more organic growth compared to Rolex's sportier collections over the past few years. When we put the four collections together in a 5-year view, we spot two interesting patterns. The first is that the three sports watch collections, especially the Daytona, saw very rapid growth in 2021-2022. The Datejust index in blue, on the other hand, saw a relatively healthy growth, up about 40% from July 2020 to the spring of 2022. The second pattern that is kind of intertwined with the first is the fact that the three sport collections all saw drastic price corrections after the downturn began, whereas the Datejust lost less than 15% since then. This tells us that the Datejust wasn't subject to nearly as much speculation as the sportier collections. Now, let's dive into the practical question of whether or not you should consider the Datejust over the Rolex sports models. First, when we consider the primary market, we need to point out that the value retention of a Datejust is probably going to be lower than that of a steel sports model. If we compare the four popular in-production models from the four collections, the Datejust has the lowest value retention of the bunch. If you have the chance to pick between the Datejust and the steel Daytona from your authorized dealer, it would be absurd for us to suggest that you go with the Datejust. Having said that, when we consider the secondary market, the Datejust is probably a slightly safer bet than the sports models. You already saw that was the case over the ups and downs of the 2021-2022 rally and the downturn that followed it, but that's likely to continue. Let's be honest, a dress watch will almost certainly receive less speculation than sports counterparts in the foreseeable future. In fact, we have a risk score at WatchCharts, which is the in-house depreciation risk that we calculate and publish on each model page. That score is lower for the Datejust than any of the sports watches we looked at today, signaling a lower predicted depreciation risk. All things considered, though, the difference is probably relatively marginal in the longer term, no more than a few $1,000s over like a decade. So you should really buy what you like. Fundamentally, the Datejust has a very different set of aesthetics compared to any sports collection of Rolex. No one knows your lifestyle and outfit style better than yourself, so you should get a watch that you'll enjoy putting on every morning. The bottom line, though, is that if you want a Rolex that is relatively conservative, both stylistically and financially, then the Datejust is probably a safer choice and better choice than a Daytona, a Sub, or a GMT. Once you're set on getting a Datejust, though, it doesn't get easier from there. There are so many models to choose from. Different sizes, smooth versus fluted bezels, oyster versus jubilee bracelets, so many dial colors, and don't get us started on the discontinued models. You should do your own research, including going to a store to try the variants on. In terms of specific references, we would recommend looking into the 3 bestsellers previously mentioned in this video. The 41mm 126334 with a fluted bezel, the 41mm 126300 with a smooth bezel, and the 36mm 126234 with a fluted bezel. Let's look at them in more detail now. First up, the best-selling Datejust that's been featured prominently in this video, reference 126334. It is the steel Datejust 41 model with a white gold fluted bezel. It has 70 hours of power reserve and 100 meters of water resistance. Since its introduction in 2017, it traded a bit below retail until the pandemic. The market price reached more than $14,000 in the spring of 2022, but has now stabilized at around $13,000. That is lower than its retail price of around $11,000. You also have the same Datejust 41, but on a smooth bezel, the reference 126300. Also introduced in 2017, it traded below retail until early 2020. After the rally brought it to more than $11,000, it is now relatively stable at $9,000, against a retail price of $8,500. The reference 126234 is the Datejust 36mm model with a fluted bezel. Introduced in 2019, it uses the same 3235 movement as the 41mm models and hit the secondary market at around $8,000. After hitting a peak of $12,000 in early 2022, the price actually hasn't dropped that much since then, currently sitting at $11,500. On our website, each of these model pages has a section titled Our Take on This Watch, which also recommends other Datejust references. We invite you to check these out for more details about these 3 watches and about the Datejust collection. What do you think of the Datejust? Do you own one? If not, is one on your radar? Please let us know down in the comments. Check out our website, WatchCharts.com, where you can explore pricing for over 28,000 watches, track market trends, and even monitor your collection's value over time. And if you're looking to buy or sell among fellow collectors, head over to our marketplace at marketplace.watchcharts.com. Our last video looked at sports watches from the 3 Holy Trinity brands based on how well they hold their value. So please go check it out if you haven't. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.